Hi guys, story time again. So we are reading the cereal box mystery and something exciting was happening. The police were running past. So let's get started on chapter 2. The stolen rubies. A police officer raced past the Alden children and almost crashed into Henry. She didn't even see him. The police officer disappeared around the corner. The children looked back in the direction from which the officer had come. They saw a man and a woman standing outside the antique store. The woman pointed and the man waved his arms in excitement. There must have been a robbery, Jessie said. Let's go find out. The children hurried up to the two people outside the store. What happened? Jessie asked as they got closer. The woman turned. She was a short woman, not much taller than Henry, with round blue eyes and long, dark brown hair pulled into a French braid. Strands of the hair were sticking out from the braid, and one of her sleeves was torn. "A robbery!" she gasped. "I tried to stop him, but he got away. He tore my shirt." "Did the robber wear a mask?" asked Penny. The man shook his head. He was a small, thin man wearing thick glasses. "I'm Will Bellows. I own the antique treasure store." He pointed to the sign above the shop. The thief was quite bold. He just grabbed something and ran out when I was helping Mrs. Smits here, another customer. Mrs. Smits was very brave. She ran after the thief and caught him right outside the door, but he pulled free. "What did he look like?" asked Henry. Mrs. Smits said, "I don't know. It all happened so fast. He wasn't very tall, but he had a hat pulled over his forehead and a scarf pulled up around the lower part of his face. He might have had a mustache. He pushed me away and ran." Mr. Bellows couldn't remember either. He stayed in the darkest part of the shop, he said, and he kept his shoulders hunched and his face turned away. He had on a tan raincoat and a brown hat. That's all I can remember. I only noticed the raincoat because it wasn't raining outside, and I thought that was odd. "What was stolen?" Violet asked. Mr. Bellows clapped his hands to his forehead. "The rings," he said. "I left the tray of rings I was showing to a customer right out on the counter." Turning, Mr. Bellows rushed back into his shop with the children and Mrs. Smith behind him. Instead, they found a small room filled with all kinds of old furniture, lamps, and books. The glass display displayed jewelry. An anxious-looking young man with round, wire-rimmed glasses was hovering near one of the ends of the glass cases. "Did you catch the thief?" he asked. "Not yet," Mr. Bellows said. "Who are you?" Benny asked. The man peered at Benny through his glasses and said, "I'm David. David Darden. I'm trying to find an engagement ring." He blushed slightly. Then he said to Benny, "Who are you?" "I'm Benny Alden," Benny said. Meanwhile, Mr. Bellows had hurried over to the blue velvet tray as David's elbows neared the tray. Meanwhile, Mr. Bellows had hurried over to the blue velvet tray at David's elbow. "They're all here," he said, sounding relieved. "All the rings are still here." Now, David looked surprised and a little hurt. "Of course they are. I stayed in the shop to make sure nothing would happen to them." "Oh," Mr. Bellows said. He looked slightly embarrassed. "Sorry, thank you." He glanced towards another corner of the store and his face grew grim. "Oh, no," he said. "What's wrong?" said Jessie. "The thief took the most valuable thing in the store, a necklace set, a matching necklace, bracelet, and ring." Mr. Bellows pointed towards a small case. They were especially valuable because they were made of rubies. The Alden children went over to look at the small case. "The lock isn't broken," said Henry. "Did it have a key in it?" "No," said Mr. Bellows. "I keep the key on my key ring." "Could the thief have picked the lock while you were helping other customers?" asked Henry. "It's possible," said Mr. Bellows. Or maybe you left it open the last time you unlocked it, Violet said. Oh, no. You locked it, said Mr. Darden. Are you sure? Asked Mr. Bellows. Yes. Right after you showed me the jewels. He went over and smiled and took a look at the beautiful jewelry. He said it was way too expensive for what I could afford for an engagement ring. It's true, Mrs. Smith chimed in. I was here when you showed the jewelry to Mr. Darden. I saw you lock the case too. It's amazing that anyone could pick that lock in such a short time, said Mr. Bellows. He looked very unhappy. There are particularly fine rubies. I was delighted when their owner offered to sell them to me. Rubies, Violet said softly. Yes, said Mr. Bellows, and these were particularly beautiful and rare in a perfectly matched set. He sat down heavily in the nearby chair. A puff of dust came up around him, but he didn't seem to notice. Oh dear, he said. I hope they catch the thief. Don't worry, said Benny. If they don't, we will. Mrs. Smith laughed. Benny put his hands on his hips. We can, he said. We've solved lots of mysteries. Although she stopped laughing, Mrs. Smith kept smiling. The Aldens could tell that she didn't believe Benny. Mr. Bellows shook his head. If someone doesn't catch the thief, he said, I'm ruined. We'd better go, said Henry. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help. Fumbling in his pocket, Mr. Bellows brought out a small notebook and a pencil. He said to Mrs. Smith and Mr. Darden, You'd better leave your names in case the police want to talk to you. Mr. Darden said, Are you sure that's necessary? I don't want my name to be in the newspaper. Mrs. Smith gave Mr. Darden a suspicious look. Well, I don't have anything to hide, she said. She took the notebook and pencil and wrote Tori Smith and her phone number in the little notebook. Reluctantly, Mr. Darden wrote his name, address, and phone number as well. Then Mrs. Smith and Mr. Darden walked out of the store with the Aldens. When they got outside, Benny raised his hand and pointed. Oh no! My bike! Look what happened to my bike! Benny's bike was no longer parked where he had left it. It was lying in the middle of the sidewalk, with the groceries spilled out all around. Quickly, the children hurried toward the bicycles. Mr. Darden and Mrs. Smith went with them. They helped the Aldens pick up the scattered cans and boxes from the grocery bag. There, Mrs. Smith said. She looked inside the basket and shifted the open box of silver frosted stars. It looks like one of your boxes of cereal got broken open when your bike fell over. You want me to throw it away? She held up the box, but Benny shook his head. No, I already opened it. It's okay. He took the box from Mrs. Smith and put it back in the basket. Thank you for helping us, said Henry. Of course, said Mr. Darden. He shook his head and smiled a little. I guess I wasn't meant to buy an engagement ring today. We're just lucky no one got hurt, Mrs. Smith said. She waved at the children and walked briskly away. Maybe I'll do a little bit more shopping, Mr. Darden said. He smiled again and made his way slowly down the sidewalk, stopping to peer into different windows. So after they got out of the antique shop, this is what they came to. The bike got knocked over. They all worked together to pick that up. That was really nice. Wow, said Benny, a robbery with the rubies. We found another mystery to solve, haven't we? Yes, Jessie said. Maybe we can help Mr. Bellows. Benny grinned. Hooray, he said. And now we have a party and a mystery. Whoever took the jewels must have known they were the most valuable thing in the store, said Henry. It had to be somebody who knew about the jewelry. But no one even knows what he looks like, said Violet. The police will probably catch the thief, Henry said. But even though he said that, his brothers and sisters agreed. They still talked about the mystery of the stolen rubies all the way home. They were all so busy talking about the day They didn't even notice the person who followed them. We're on to chapter 3. I'll see you at chapter 3. Bye, guys.